So, this is, I guess kind of a companion piece to the Street Fighter video that I did. There's a handful of things that I wanted to talk about that was a part of that era of Street Fighter that didn't necessarily fit into the actual video itself. Mostly just context on a few things, and then just some questions and some stuff that I was surprised that I was incorrect on for so many years. I wrote down the things that I wanted to discuss, just a few bullet points. So starting off, one thing that I was surprised about was Ken's nationality. For the longest time, I thought he was like born and raised in America because, you know, in Street Fighter 2, that's where he's at, and in every single game, his country is the United States. But it turns out he was born and raised in Japan. Now, the breakdown of his nationality is kind of weird because some of the sources say that his mother was half Japanese and half American, and his father was full-on Japanese. And then I've also heard ones where, like, I think the father was American and the mother was full Japanese, or like half Japanese. The breakdown is not very consistent, but I think the current stance is that half American, half Japanese mother, Japanese father. But why the fuck is his last name Masters? Like, if you take the father's last name over there, like here, how the fuck is there a Japanese dude with the last name Masters? I don't get it. I was going to bring it up in the original script, but it didn't really affect the plot in any way, but I felt like it's something that I wanted to bring up because that was just a very weird discrepancy. Next, and I did actually record this for the video, but I took it out because I thought it was weird. The connection of Bison and Rose. So, as I mentioned in that part of the video, Soul Power is basically an uncorrupted version of Psycho Power. And Bison and Rose's storylines are connected, especially in the Alpha era, which we're going to be getting to later on down the road whenever that video is put out. So prior to me researching all of this, I thought that Bison and Rose were the same being but split apart, and Bison was, well, no. Let me rephrase. So all this time I thought Bison learned Psycho Power by expunging his good half of his soul from his body, and the good half of his soul became Rose, which turns out that wasn't the case. It was the fact that Bison and Rose were totally separate people, but some sources say that Rose was Bison's master and Bison was Rose's master. Yeah, so they say, like, yeah, Bison murdered his own master, and more of my sources said that as opposed to Bison and Rose being... It wasn't clear. It was a lot of contradictory stuff, and it just made more sense to me that it went down that way as opposed to them being part of the same soul, or they're connected in some way, but as far as the master-student relationship on either way, with Bison being the master or Rose being the master and the other person being the student, yeah, I don't know. And just because of how messy it was, I just left that out of the video entirely. Another thing, and this is something I did not know anything about. This is actually me learning some completely new lore. So, Street Fighter 1 that game technically never happened. Like, the only thing that actually happened in that game was Ryu fighting Sagat. Because the series of events is that Ryu goes to Thailand, he fights a bunch of Muay Thai fighters to get Sagat's attention, and he goes on to fight Sagat, and then, you know, the end of the game happens the way that it happens. Retu and Joe and Mike and obviously Birdie and Gin and Lee, you know, they exist in the universe, and they are canon characters, but they never fought Ryu. Ryu never fought them. There was no tournament. It was just Ryu going ham on a bunch of Muay Thai dudes and then going to fight Sagat at the end. So it was weird. Like, I had no idea, and shit, they don't really ever talk about the original Street Fighter in the later games outside of, you know, the match between Sagat and Ryu, so how could I have known? Which brings me to the next point. How Ryu won, like Ryu's victory over Sagat. For the longest time, I thought that he used the Satsui no Hado to overcome Sagat. Like, Sagat was basically beating the shit out of Ryu, and like Sagat thought the fight was over, so he extends his hand to Ryu to kind of help him up off the ground, but then Ryu taps in the Satsui no Hado and shoryus him, and, you know, that kicks off him and Sagat's rivalry. But pretty much the only source that says that from my research was Tiamat, but everybody else said that there was no Satsui no Hado. So going off of the majority, I decided to go with leaving that part out and just having it be Ryu just defeating Sagat clean. Which it kind of makes my interpretation of some of the events with Ryu and Alpha kind of different, because, and I don't want to reveal too much of what's going to happen for those who don't know or don't pay attention to this shit, but I originally thought that the Satsui no Hado like first showed up at the end of that fight, and then it leaves Ryu to kind of question, you know, what this power is inside of him. He's conflicted, and then Akuma, you know, he senses that there's another person out there and that can give him a good fight that also uses Satsui no Hado, so that kind of puts Ryu on Akuma's radar, and that kind of starts their whole thing. It's really interesting, so I'm not sure how Akuma even gets interested in him if he doesn't already have the Satsui no Hado. But, you know, we'll explore all that into the next video. Pretty much that's about all I really had off the top of my head. For the most part, everything kind of happened the way that I thought it was going to, outside of those things that I outlined earlier. But since Alpha is much more involved, and there's a lot of characters involved, and a lot of storylines happening at once, I'll probably end up having more to talk about on the next bonus video than I do on this one. Anyway, that's all I got, and I will catch you guys on the next Street Fighter part, whenever the hell that comes out. Catch you guys later.